What do we do with despair? That's what I want to focus on this morning, this week. I want to wrestle with the place of despair in the heart and life of a Christian. Because too often I think that when it comes to things like sorrow, or when it comes to things like pain, or when it comes to elements like despair, Christians either are too easy to dismiss them. At times we even feel guilty because we feel them, thinking that because we belong to Jesus and we believe in a resurrection, that we should only be filled with moments of joy. And at other times we just simply look at what they are and say, I don't know where they fit. I know they exist. I just don't know where they fit. I've come to believe that every expression, because of Christ coming to this earth, every expression that we experience, whether through thought or whether through emotion, can serve as an entry point to connection with God, even despair. Growing up, one of my favorite singer-songwriters was a man by the name of Rich Mullins. Now, some of you may know exactly who Rich Mullins is, and some of you may have no clue. Rich Mullins was a singer-songwriter, late 80s, early 90s, mid-90s. He actually passed away in around 96, 97, around in that area. And I remember actually seeing Rich Mullins in concert a couple of months before he died. And in my closet at home, I have a picture of my youth group all sitting, and Rich Mullins is sitting on the stage, and I have my arm on his leg. And we're just posing for a random picture because that's who Rich was. He was a phenomenal musician, an incredible lyricist, but he was somebody whose pursuit of God was so unique, was so genuine, was so authentic, that even though I didn't always love the style of music he played, I was enamored with the spirit embedded in it. I remember reading his biography, and there was a story inside of it that stuck with me, and this morning it made me, when I was wrestling with this concept of despair, this is what I thought of. One of his good friends was supposed to go over and have dinner with Rich, and so he shows up at Rich's house, and Rich opens the door, and he is a mess. He has been sobbing. His face is red and puffy. His eyes are just streaming. And Rich opens the door, and his friend is obviously concerned, saying like, hey, what's going on? What's happening? And Rich said, I just got off the phone, and I found out that my close friend and mentor, who I looked upon as almost like a second father, just died about a half hour ago. And of course his dinner guest was like, hey man, we can do this some other time. He's like, no, and Rich is like, no, come on in. And his friend thought that Rich would then work to pull himself together. But Rich kept weeping and weeping. And his friend at one point said, do you want me to go? And Rich goes, no, I want you to be here. And Rich then said this statement, which I found to be incredibly profound. He said, I'm sorry if this moment makes you feel uncomfortable, but I want to press deeply into this mourning, into this pain, while it is still fresh, because I'm afraid I will miss something in it that teaches me about drawing closer to the Lord. Despair, in the moment, for Rich, was an entry point to God. And one of the things I find fascinating is that Rich was a profound singer-songwriter, and he understood the place of despair, which reminds me a lot of the book of Psalms, which is filled with singer-songwriters. There's something about music that does not shy away from the full spectrum of emotions, from the happiness and joy to the down of the depths of despair and mourning. And the psalmists are brutal, and they are raw in their expression of their despair. This morning I was reading Psalm chapter 88, and I want to read to you verse 13 and following. Listen to the intensity. It says, "But I cried to you for help, Lord. In the morning my prayer comes before you. Why, Lord, do you reject me and hide your face from me? From my youth I have suffered and been close to death. I have borne your terrors and am in despair. Your wrath has swept over me. Your terrors have destroyed me. All day long they surround me like a flood. They have completely engulfed me. You have taken from me friend and neighbor. And then it ends with this line. This is how the psalm ends. Darkness is my closest friend. The intensity of the psalmist's despair at a certain point just stops and makes me wonder, does despair have a place? Or are you just ranting? Are you just lashing out? Do you not know how to deal with your mourning? In reality, I think Psalms like Psalm 88 are put into the inspired Word of God to teach us how to engage despair, to teach us how to transform despair into an entry point to God. This psalm actually begins with the statement of faith. Even though it ends with a note of despair, the psalm begins with this: Lord, you are the God who saves me. You know, one of the problems whenever it comes to our sorrow, our suffering, our mourning, our despair as Christians, is that we do not allow ourselves to fully experience it. And we do not allow ourselves to fully express it to God. We actually try to hide our emotions of despair from Him. And there's a part of that that seems to be so strange. Because number one, He put those desires, He put those emotions in your heart to begin with. And number two, we hide it from Him as if He doesn't know the depths of the despair in our hearts anyway. One of the things that I have learned from reading the Psalms and from listening to sages like Rich Mullins is that unless Christians express their despair full-throated, with all of the intensity that they can muster to God, then they will never experience the despair that they have in front of them as an entry point to God. Or let me even rephrase it. They won't experience despair as the entry point to its opposite, hope. I do not believe that hope is born from wishful thinking. I do not believe that the origins of hope are found in delusional wishes. I believe that hope is discovered through the entry point of our full expression of despair. Because as the psalmists teach us, it is only when we bring the full expression of our despair to the Lord can we truly begin the process of healing, truly begin the process of transformation, truly begin to encounter the God of hope, or as Psalm 88 says it, to truly encounter the God who saves me. This week, my challenge is not for you to find a way to be in despair. My challenge for you this week is this: search your heart and find out if you can find hidden places where you are allowing darkness to be your closest friend instead of God coming in, experiencing your despair, and guiding you to the path of hope. He's a big boy. He can take the full expression of your heart. So this week, don't hide your heart from Him. Give all of it to Him. The joy, the thankfulness, and the despair. I love you guys. I'll talk to you next week.